Hey guys, Chase with Sherpa Equipment Company. Today we're going to be installing our Oxford rack on this Lexus LX470. This is also the same rack that would be installed on the 100 series Land Cruiser. So the first thing we're going to do today is take off the stock roof rack, and to do that we're going to use some plastic trim tools. You can use a screwdriver if we don't have these, but we recommend against it. It can scratch your paint. And yeah, so we'll go get that off and get the rack up there. So depending on which vehicle you have, you might have a little bit different roof rack on it from the factory. However, the process is going to be generally the same, and that is all these plastic caps pop off with a little pressure. You want to be careful not to break the tabs if you're going to reuse them eventually. But you also, on some vehicles, might have a middle mount. This vehicle does not, but to remove that, you simply have to first take off the two end caps, and then it will slide forward. It's in a little slotted mount. So popping these caps off is very simple. This plastic can be fragile, but should come off rather easily. All you have to do is work your edge trim tool between the plastic cap and the roof of the vehicle, and then a slight outward motion should pop it right off. And now we'll do the same for the other three caps. Now that we got the plastic caps off, we're going to go ahead and remove these 4 bolts on each side, and our roof rack should lift right up. Okay, one important step when you're removing these bolts is you want to be careful not to remove one completely before you've loosened the other. This will prevent you from spinning the capture plate that's inside of your roof. If that happens, you have to remove the roof liner and it can get messy. Now that we got all the bolts out of the rack, we're going to go ahead and simply lift it right up. Should pop off rather easily, and we'll get it out of the way. So now that the stock rack is off, we're going to go ahead and remove this gutter trim. To do this, you're going to just pull up one end of the trim, and you can slide it down. And then you have to just kind of work it easily up off of the metal clips that are in the gutter. Should pop up relatively easy. Also, this is going to be different depending on which model vehicle you have. You might not have to remove it, but on this one we do. Now that we've got it off, we can remove that, and that will expose our mounting spot for the middle mounts. Now that we got the gutter trim off the vehicle, it's a good idea to take a wet microfiber rag and clean up your mounting spots. This will ensure good seal on the rack. So now that the gutter's clean, you're going to notice that you have some spacers that the roof rack was originally mounted onto. To get these off the roof, you might have to heat it up a little bit. We recommend a heat torch or a hair dryer, something like that. It is adhesive to the roof, so it's kind of difficult to get up sometimes, but once you get that up, we'll clean up the mounting surface, and that'll leave a clean surface for our rubber mounting feet. So the next step on this Lexus is we're going to be exposing the 2 mounting holes for the middle mounting feet for our rack. So to do this, we're going to go ahead and remove the 2 bolts that are towards the front of the vehicle. We're going to go ahead and leave the 3rd one back, and this will open up our new mount spot. So again, with these 2 bolts, there is a plate in the roof, so you're going to want to make sure and loosen them evenly before taking one completely out. So one interesting thing about our Oxford rack is it's a unique rack in the sense that we send you 2 different mounting feet for the front because you have 2 different options to mount from. That is completely up to you which one you want to use, but the difference is that the hole spacing for the mounts, or for the bolts, will be a little bit different whether you use the forward one or the back one. This is where the factory mount was on the for the forward part of the rack. However, we're going to be using these 2 holes. We like to do that just to get the mounts farther forward, get better weight distribution and support. So before we get too far ahead of ourselves, we're going to want to go ahead and fill these factory holes with our middle bolts that we had just taken out of our middle mounting spot. So to do that, we're going to put a little blue Loctite on just to make sure it's a good seal. And we're going to go ahead and thread those back into the factory mounting spot, and then next go ahead and remove the forward 2 bolts for our forward mounting feet. And just like when we were removing these, you're going to want to remember to get them both started before you tighten either one down. That way you don't spin the plate inside your roof. So now that we got our original holes covered back up, we're going to go ahead and move forward and remove the forward-most bolts. Again, loosen both evenly before fully removing. So now that our rack's off, all of the mounting holes are exposed, we can come over and take a peek at what we got inside of our box. So we're going to have your fairing, you're going to have 2 boxes of crossbars, your side plates, all of your hardware, your mounting feet, and your rubber mounting spacers. So we'll notice that we do have 4 mounting feet for the front. These are different. There's not a mistake here. You'll notice that the holes for the bolts go to the roof are going to be a little bit wider on one and a little narrower on the other. This is for, depending on which mounting spot you use on the truck, it'll vary which one you're going to use. So for this application, we're going to be using the more narrow of the 2 mounts. This will be the farthest forward mounting spot on the truck. This will also be the same. We have 2 different types of rubber, narrow and wide. We're going to be using the narrow for this one. So now that we know which mounting feet we're going to be using, we're going to go ahead and assemble them onto our crossbars. So you can go ahead and open up one of your crossbar boxes and grab 3 crossbars. So now we're going to cut up in the hardware section of our bag. You will notice it's going to have 2 different separated sections. The smaller section is going to be your fairing hardware, so we'll leave that in the bag for now. But the other stuff we can cut open and get sorted. Alright, so now that we got our hardware separated, we're going to go ahead and start putting our T-nuts into our crossbar. So to do this, all you need to do is put it in at an angle, pop it in, and it should grip both sides of the track. Very simple. Do this to both sides. It does not matter which direction the thick end is pointing. Then you'll take your mounting feet, your 1/4-inch hex bolts, and a washer, and start installing the mounting feet onto the crossbar. Installing the mounting feet, you're going to want to just thread these bolts in loosely. You're going to want to be able to slide it, and you're also going to want to make sure your bottom of your mounting foot is facing out. Okay, now that our mounting feet are installed onto the crossbars, we can go ahead and get our mounting bolts ready to go. We can put our bonded washers onto those. You want to just go ahead and slide it all the way up to the head. Now that we got all of our bonded washers onto our mounting bolts, we can go ahead and grab a crossbar, grab our rubber mounting spacers, and head up to the roof. So if you're doing this install alone, it's a good idea to get your rubber mounting spacers up first. That way you don't have to set your mounting feet on your roof, damage the paint. And then you're going to notice on all of our mounts, they have a small notch on one end. That notch is always going to face the front end of the vehicle. So once you find out which side that is, you can go ahead and lightly place your mounting feet onto the rubber. And then you'll take 2 of your mounting bolts with your bonded washers on them and lightly start threading them into the roof. Okay. Now that you got them loosely started, you can do this with the other 2 mounting feet and crossbars. So now that we have our mounted crossbars on the roof, we're going to go ahead and center up each crossbar. To do this, we like to take a tape measure and mount from the inside of the mounting foot to the outside of the crossbar. So we have already gotten that figured out. It's going to be different for each vehicle, but a good starting place would be about 3 7/8 for the front, 4 1/4 for the middle, and about 5 inches on the rear. So you should be even on both sides. Now that we got the crossbar centered up, you can grab a 7/16 wrench and tighten the bolts going from the bottom of the mounting foot into the crossbar. Now that our crossbars are on the roof, we can go ahead and open our side plate package. So this is a good step to grab a friend if you have one available. We're going to go ahead and get these mounted up on our crossbars. Important to note, when you're installing these, you just want to loosely thread them in so you can slide the side plate back and forth. And now we're going to do the same thing on the other side. So now that we got the side plates on, loosely started, we're going to go ahead and open up the rest of our crossbars and get those up on the rack. Now that we got the rest of our crossbars open, you're going to want to make sure you keep one for your fairing. We'll be getting to that later. But now that you have the other ones, you can get your friend to help you again, and we'll just go ahead and start threading these into the side plates. You can do this however you want. You can space them however you want, whichever's best for your needs, but we're going to just space them evenly. It's a good idea to leave these loose, that way you can slide them back and forth and adjust to the correct spacing for your needs. Now that we've got all the crossbars up, they're still loose, but now we can go ahead and center the side plates and make sure they follow the curve of the vehicle. And on this rack, it looks like the front mounting feet are just about centered on the front slot here. Once you got it centered and you're happy with the curve, you can go ahead and start tightening them all down. And it's a good idea to just go one side to the other. This will square the crossbars up automatically. The next step is we're going to go ahead and install our fairing onto our crossbar. To do this, you'll need your fairing, and then make sure you still have one crossbar left. And you're also going to need the remainder of your hardware from your hardware packaging. And then to install the fairing onto the crossbar, it's very simple. We have a little trick where you can line up the fairing to be even with the crossbar. Then you can see just about where your T-nuts are going to need to go to make it a little easier for you. Again, we're just going to drop our T-nuts in one at a time. Then once all 6 T-nuts are in, you can go ahead and place your fairing on top of the crossbar. You're going to want to make sure your letters are facing the right way. It should be the first two letters of your rack name. And then you are going to take your socket button bolts and go ahead and loosely start threading them into the T-nuts. And it's important to just do it loosely, that way you can still slide your fairing back and forth to line up the holes with your T-nuts. We can go ahead and center the fairing onto the crossbar. It should be the exact same length as the crossbar, so it should be flush on either side. And then you can go ahead and tighten them all down. Good. All right, now that the fairing's installed onto the crossbar, you can go ahead and take your remaining 4 socket button bolts and washers and take it up to the top of the truck where we will install it. So to install this, you're going to do the same thing you did with all the crossbars. Go ahead and loosely get all of the bolts started, and then you can slide it to your desired height. So now we got all the 4 bolts started, you can go ahead and slide this to your desired height. We find that it's best about a 1/4 inch off of the roof. You just want to make sure that you have a gap on both sides, also on the crossbar on the back side, so it's not resting and rattling off your roof. That being said, if you do have any issues with wind noise or vibration, you can very easily adjust it to make that go away. Now that all the crossbars are tightened down, the fairing's tight, we're going to go through and tighten down the mounting feet. You're going to want to go till the bonded washer just gets about flat. No need to go any more than that. And yeah, that should be about it. Now that we're all finished, it's a good idea to go through, make sure everything's tight, didn't miss anything. It's also a good idea after about 100 miles, 200 miles to go back through, make sure none of your hardware has loosened itself up. Other than that, the rack looks great on the truck. If you run into any issues installing, feel free to give us a call, shoot us an email, we can help you. Other than that, the truck is finished, and now you can adventure with confidence.